Hi, everybody. I'm Bill Whittle. This is Bill Whittle Now. We're flying solo one more day while Scott Ott is away, and he's expected back tomorrow, so we'll look forward to getting back to our regular format. And as we probably know by now, the whole idea of the show was to get my first take on things, so we're going to do what we've done for the last 2 days solo, and that is go to the Drudge Report, and whatever the top headline is there, that's what we'll talk about. So here we go. Mueller cornered. Well, we talked about that yesterday. Let's talk about it again in a different aspect. Yesterday we talked about the idea of two-tiered justice, one for Republicans and one for Democrats, and went pretty far to explain what the different standards, not only of public decorum and optimistic reporting are, but what the actual press drumbeat about criminal activities is for one party and not for another. So let's just say, for the sake of the argument, that that this Mueller probe collapses somewhat spectacularly. What happens then? Right here on the Drudge page that I'm seeing in real time is a graphic that says, now that Russia collusion is a proven lie, when did the trials for treason begin? And there's pictures of Bill Clinton, Obama, Schumer, Hillary, needless to say, and a lot of other people, former attorney generals, both of them, and so on and so forth. So let's just kind of play with that idea for a second. In a world where we had a free press, this collapse, let's assume also that this is true. This is the problem with reporting on breaking news. You never really know exactly what the actual details are, but let's just assume, for the sake of it, that these two that this particular story is true. What happens then? Well, I think there should be more than egg on the face of the Democrats, and I think there should be more consequences than their progressive followers being forced to go out into the street and wail at the top of their lungs in order to alleviate their triggered little consciences. This has the look of it from the beginning of being an inside hit job from the political party of the former administration, certainly members of the former administration. There's collusion with the FBI. There's collusion with forget collusion. There's pretty much direct ownership of the Department of Justice. Any number of bits of evidence to indicate that the Democrats and people inside what people are calling the deep state, which I used to think was a bit of a overstatement, but which I don't believe anymore. We've got an entire collusion between former Obama administration officials, the Clintons, the FBI under the Department of Justice with Comey and Loretta Lynch and all the rest of these people, and the IRS. It's a coup, and it's a slow motion coup. It's like watching ivy grow up the side of a building or strangle a tree. It happens in such slow motion that nobody can see what it is. But it is, in fact, by all accounts now, an attempt by the party formerly in power to destroy a president currently in power on charges that don't exist, because they cannot accept the fact that the American people had the audacity to choose somebody other than who they told them to choose. I don't know what else to call it. I don't know what else to call it. That's what it looks like to me. And the one thing that I do not understand about Donald Trump, and I cannot understand about Donald Trump, was why Jeff Sessions was held on to for as long as he was. And when is the Justice Department going to become the Justice Department and do its job? At what point can we expect to see justice in this country? When I say justice, I mean things like, at what point can we take the investigation that the FBI director showed that Hillary Clinton had committed multiple felonies? At what point will we be able to take the results of that investigation and that data and actually use it to prosecute criminals for their crimes? And if Donald Trump has committed felony crimes while president of the United States, then he deserves to go to jail too. There certainly doesn't seem to be any evidence of that, but my standards are not double standards on this. If you're an elected politician, you have the same responsibilities to follow the law as an average citizen does. And if you don't think that, then we have a big discussion coming up between the people and the government. And it's pretty clear to me that there's a large group of people who have basically put a lot of effort and time and money into this Mueller probe, determined to either bring down Trump or give an excuse for impeachment of Trump, whether the impeachment actually succeeds in terms of removing him from office, anything possible to discredit Trump and therefore drive away potential Trump supporters. This is what the last 2 years have shown me, is that they will stop at nothing to destroy Trump. They'll stop at nothing to destroy guys like Kavanaugh in order to make the atmosphere so toxic that even admitting that you voted for Donald Trump is an act of courage, at least out here in California. I've said this a few times before. What's at stake here is not the result of an election. What's at stake here is not who's in power. What's at stake here goes even beyond the Supreme Court. What's at stake here is there law in this country, yes or no? Is there a rule of law, yes or no? Or are you able to do what you want with impunity, commit multiple felony violations, and as long as you're a high-ranking Democrat, you will not only not be prosecuted for it, you'll have the press cover it up for you. On the other hand, if you're a Republican, anything that might be remotely suspicious, and you can ask Sarah Palin about this, and the number of people that looked into Sarah Palin's background versus the number of media reports that looked into Barack Obama's background back in 2008, this is what we're dealing with. And at what point are we going to stop being chumps about this and say, well, the due course, and blah, blah, blah. If the Mueller probe falls apart, because the Mueller probe is a self-starting investigation, the people that launched the probe provided the false evidence that the probe's entire premise was based upon. So it's a circular argument and has been from the beginning. If it can be shown that there are no charges against Donald Trump that will stand up after 2.5 years of investigation, then there needs to be another investigation by the Department of Justice into the people that called for this probe, into the people that supplied this false evidence, into the people that have covered it up, into the people that knew it was false and reported on it. And some people need to go to jail. They need to go to jail because they've committed crimes, not because they're members of a different political party, because they've committed felony crimes. And if the entire country can watch Hillary Clinton just walk away from the biggest security leak in the history of the country, certainly since Robert Walker, how the hell are we supposed to enforce the law against somebody who may be a master sergeant who by accident took home a thumb drive that may have had a document on it that was of low-level classification? Nevertheless, it's a violation of security clearances. How are we supposed to deal with this? And why on earth are the American people expected to obey the law, including laws that say things like pay your taxes, when the entire political leadership of at least one party and often both parties simply walks around with absolute utter impunity and a little smug smile on their face, knowing that they're untouchable? This is where the future of the country is going to be determined. Is it going to be a country ruled by law, or are we now in a place where we have an aristocracy, and the credentials for the aristocracy are pretty simple? You have to have a pure bloodline, which means you have to be a progressive, and you also have to have a coat of arms, which means you have to be a Democrat. If you have these two qualities, then you can be an earl, a count, a baron, a duke, and walk with the same kind of impunity through the village as a duke could have walked in 1300 in England. Just simply out of my way, peasants. Off with his head. I would like to sleep with this person's wife before he does. So I have prima nocta, the right to sleep with any bride in my district prior to the husband sleeping with her. And judging from Bill Clinton, we're not too far from that either. So here you go, folks. This is the question. Rule of law, yes or no? If the Mueller probe collapses, what happens then? Because the entire existence of progressivism is predicated on the fact that nobody remembers anything. The appeal of socialism is predicated on the fact that nobody talks about 150 million people killed and eating pets in Venezuela and having people starving in Cuba while Fidel Castro has $800 million in his personal account. You got to forget everything in order to be a socialist. And they're going to try and forget this too. So if this thing comes down, I don't understand why a fighter like Donald Trump has not fought back legally with the powers that he has as President of the United States. The Justice Department Attorney General serves at the pleasure of the president, and so does the FBI director. And that means Donald Trump can appoint whoever he damn well wants to and be fully within his constitutional powers. And I am fondly hoping that he is now, that especially that the midterm elections are over, are going to unleash some attack dogs who are going to go after this criminal conspiracy the same way that they went after the criminal conspiracy of Al Capone and the Gambino family. You know, you make a pretty good case that the entire upper echelon of the Democratic Party is you can get them with RICO. You know, racketeer, influenced, corrupt organizations. Just RICO the entire top stratum of the Democratic Party, and convict them under those prosecutorial powers. And what are we going to do about it? This is the question. Nobody knows. Nobody knows. Nobody seems to care. And that amnesia is going to cost us the country. So we'd better figure out pretty quick whether we're going to remember whether we're a nation of laws or not. And if we're not, then we're going to have to be prepared to make our own laws, which is what they seem to be forcing us into, and certainly what they seem to be wanting to force us into. That'll do it for this cheery edition of Bill Whittle Now, brought to you by the paying members at BillWhittle.com. Scott Ott rejoins us tomorrow. It'll be great to have him back. Thanks very much for joining us. We'll see you then.